Good morning, everybody. My name is Jack Dangermond, and it's my great pleasure to welcome all of you from around the world to the, 2021 International Esri Users Conference. The purpose of this meeting is quite simple. It's to help you in your career, for us to share the technology that we're advancing, but also an opportunity for you to share the work that you're doing and give us feedback. It's about understanding and learning and inspiring each other to take on the great challenges that our world is facing today. This year, in addition to all of the activities that are underway, we're also going to be focusing on creating a more sustainable future for our planet. Before we go further in my presentation, I'd like to say a few words about who you are. This year, we're joined at this conference with over 50,000 GIS professionals from about 130 countries. And you have many different backgrounds. You're special people in the sense that you're GIS users, but you're also from different fields. Thousands of teachers, thousands of science people, people working in government and in business. Your backgrounds are different, your organizations are different, yet you've come together to create a kind of global geographic information system community. The work that you are doing is, from my perspective, just extraordinary. For the last month, you've been sending me maps and examples of your work, and you sent thousands. And by the way, I wanted to say thank you very much. I've been combing through it and studying it. I'm almost overwhelmed by the breadth and the magnitude of your work, addressing virtually every big issue that our world is facing, from energy to environment, to climate change, to modernizing cities, and so on. Each year, at the beginning of this conference, we pick just a few of those and show them and showcase them, and I'm going to do that right now. Here's some examples of your work in environmental monitoring and assessment. And wow, I'm just saying, there's hundreds of submissions on this year's presentation, but look at the one in the upper left, the good work of the E.O. Wilson Biodiversity Foundation, mapping biodiversity for the planet. Some of you are working on looking at the footprint of humans, like up in Canada in Ottawa, and others are monitoring things like sea ice, they're tracking fish movements, they're looking at water quality, and thousands of other activities related. These examples show your work in natural resource management, ranging from sustainable farming in Brazil to looking for suitable farming in the Navajo Nation. In forestry, almost every modern forest organization uses GIS in one way or the other. But I'm charmed by the little slide in the lower right showing field-based forestry management activities for small foresters in Germany. Lots of work in conservation. I'm very pleased to say that this is some of the most important work that we must do. Planning, managing, understanding. In the center, we see the analysis, the science analysis of elephant range patterns and the human-elephant conflicts. In the upper left, some of the great work going on for green infrastructure planning in the Po River hydrological basin in northern Italy. And on the right, you can see the management of ecosystems, like at the Archibald Biological Station, using fire, a natural system, to better manage ecosystems, change and growth. Some of you are using GIS to manage land information, land records. Let's call them parcels. And these are kind of a foundation, in my view, for so much of our civil society. But it's not just managing the boundaries, doing the system of record that is shown here. It's the application of those records, integrating it with other layers like soils and floodplains to do more rational assessments, property assessments. And look at the one on the far right. This was done by the Dutch cadastre working in Colombia to have a fit-for-purpose configuration of the collector technology for field surveying of cadastral data. Many of you are working in urban design and planning, creating a future in our cities. And here, again, I'm so anxious to share these with you. In the far right, we see Berlin and Brandenburg region really working on creating a sustainable urban footprint. And this is some of the best work going on in the world, frankly. Others are updating urban plans, like the city of Paris in the lower right here, and just visualizing what's going on, creating new patterns of development, doing it in such a way that it is sustainable and administratively correct. GIS is continuing to evolve, and over the years I've watched it in this evolution. One of the big steps that has been made in the last few years is the movement into buildings and facilities. Its integration with BIM has meant that a whole new class of applications are emerging, from space management and fighting fires and indoor response. For example, this great work in Kuwait by the fire department. And look at the upper right-hand corner. This is CERN. CERN is the large European research center where the nuclear accelerator lives. And they have actually moved to a state of managing all their workspaces on the entire campus using GIS as a framework. GIS originated in many places, and one of them was in transportation with advanced modeling, trying to predict movement of people. In the lower right, you'll see in Jakarta the application of origin-destination modeling to predict ridership in buses and other vehicles. And in the far left, you'll see the application of GIS to optimize bus routes and also pick the right locations using operations research tools for stops. Many of you have traveled through the San Francisco airport before, and that entire complex is now managed with GIS, including all the rooms and walking times from gate to gate and so on. But speaking about time, the upper left-hand slide is interesting because it shows real-time traffic monitoring. Increasingly, this is a pattern going on in various regional and national agencies showing real-time geography. Engineering and public works management organizations are embracing the power of GIS to do their applications at many scales. I'd like to draw here your attention to the map in the center by Tetra Tech, which is a pipeline, showing a pipeline across Pennsylvania being constructed. What they applied is the web map pattern, and associated with those web maps, all the different construction status activities during construction. It was kind of a living construction manifest. In the lower left, I like this green map because it's showing the targeting of where infrastructure investments should be made. This is a very relevant topic for all of us these days. And again, one of my favorites in this collection is up in the upper right in Switzerland, looking underneath the ground at pipelines, not the exact location, but the approximate location, which is helping excavate and understand the grid underground. Water and wastewater management agencies around the world are using GIS for asset management, things like being able to support service orders or manage inspections. Look at the one on the left. It's looking at the analytics. It's making a map showing age of the network, analyzing, again, where investments should be made. But here, my favorite is up in the upper right. It's showing not a real time, but looking over the last quarter at sewer conditions and how they changed almost at a glance. In other words, summarizing all of the asset information and its management. Utility energies, electricity and gas, are likewise using GIS for traditional applications like asset management and vegetation management, and increasingly for outage management, like this interesting map in the center showing the outage of the Colonial Pipeline gas network in the southeast as a result of the cyber terrorism activities. But in almost every utility that I'm talking with these days, they're moving over to renewable energy. They're hunting for the right locations for solar and for wind production and applying GIS to manage their farms in a whole new way. Similarly, in telecommunications, both traditional networks, wireline or 4G, is being managed extensively with GIS, but also the next generation of telecommunication, 5G, like this beautiful example in Sydney showing siting of tower to support using viewshed, pick the right location for these towers. And in Albuquerque, they're doing network planning. And our national government here in the US is using it to assess and model the coverage of broadband for the entire country. This is a very important topic because it identifies those areas where we have the potential of a digital divide, those populations that are being left behind because they're not connected to the web with powerful enough network. Our cities, our countries, our nation, our world is safer because of GIS. In the law enforcement areas, they are looking at past historic crime rates to see pattern and allocate resources accordingly. They're also increasingly looking at real-time information, doing crime monitoring. They're looking at everything from school threats in local geographies all the way to monitoring our global security risk. And EMS organizations and fire organizations are not only picking the right locations for their facilities, like based on drive times, but they're also addressing major and significant issues like the opioid crisis here in the United States, being able to respond more effectively. In the field of disaster preparedness and response, likewise, GIS has had a long history. These examples show some of the modern stuff that's going on. I'm fond of this one in the Congo done by Kokusai Kogyo, looking at ground deformation near a volcano. But whether it's fire real-time or fire assessments of risk or doing damage assessments, and in flooding and in severe weather, GIS is playing a very significant and major force. Now, the lower right shows, again, Kokusai Kogyo in Japan simulating the Fukushima earthquake that had happened a few years ago. And in this simulation, they're developing methods to be able to apply very quickly what might happen in other places in Japan and around the world. In 2020, the US Census carried out their centennial count of population. And GIS was central for this, not simply in making the maps, which are shown here, but also in actually structuring and running the census. It's based on geography, of course. And they were able to maintain with dashboards the completeness of their count as they carried it out. Now that the census is done, America is doing redistricting, which are political redistricts for congressional members. And GIS is again playing a significant role. I'll call your attention here to the map on the far right and the lower, which is illustrating population migration to Libya from across Africa. Libya is kind of a gateway into Europe for migrants, and these maps are quite extraordinary. Your work in social equity, particularly in the last year, is striking. You are studying the lingering effects of redlining, or de facto redlining still existing in Detroit. You're looking at accessibility, for example, accessibility to health facilities, or the relationship between poverty and access to legal resources, or in your planning work, looking at trails and equity planning and park accessibility relative to equity, creating understanding and creating what I see in the future, a more equitably and balanced population. COVID has affected nearly all of us. And last week, we passed this mark of 4 million people on the planet have died as a result of this horrible disease. Your work has contributed here because it's shown the world what's going on. The great work by Johns Hopkins University keeps track even today and has made over 2 trillion maps. Not only are we better informed of what the status is, but as the interesting visualization in the center shows, we've been able to look at patterns. This is showing the dynamics of what happened in Central Europe, or Europe, during the winter months during the disease. And your applications in site selection for vaccination, or return to office management, or even look at the interesting map in Liberia where they mapped in great detail every case and set up quarantine zones to shut the pandemic down, and it worked. GIS continues to grow and be hugely beneficial in both business analysis and economic development. These examples show it. Optimizing delivery routes, cutting carbon. picking the right locations to avoid multi-hazard insurance, like in Japan, picking the right sites, picking the right territories. All of these are very powerful, not just in business, but increasingly being used in government to target economic development sectors of various types. Imagery and remote sensing of many different types is increasingly infiltrating, impacting, benefiting the GIS workflows that many of you do, whether it's vegetation health from recently collected drone imagery or forest inventories at a massive scale like at the U.S. Forest Service. Over on the far right, you'll notice this intriguing map to look into the ground and understand pipe deficiency. And another one like that is the satellite-derived bathymetry map. And then, I like this slide very much because your work is showing a complete gamut, including surveillance of illegal fishing to protect the Galapagos, for example, and modeling snow depth and runoff. These are hugely beneficial dimensions of remote sensing that are affecting GIS and geography in general. These maps show a collection of just beautiful cartography. And I picked these myself. I just found them very interesting. The warming of the Arctic by the Woodville Climate Research Center, or these maps of Mars and the terrain surfaces. And look at this interesting one about picking suitable landing sites for the Mars lander. We'll come back to that later in this session with a presentation from JPL. The hiking map atlas I'm very fond of. This company in Austria has been in existence for 250 years, and they now have a completely automated GIS-based atlas generation activity. And over in the far left, we can look at a zoning map that was made for colorblind populations. It's an interesting palette that is available now that we can apply in various sorts of settings. All of these maps that I've been showing you, these maps, but also all of the work that I've shared in the last few minutes, have interesting stories associated with it. I absolutely sense that I grew as I read these stories. I understand better the kind of footprint, the magnitude of the work that you are up to. Each year, we select out of our 350,000 customers around the world, a small group of people, less than 150, to receive what we call a Special Achievement in GIS Award, or a SAG Award. These are the ones that were selected this year in the United States, and these are the ones that were selected around the world. These organizations distinguish themselves by really doing fantastic things. They organized all the data. They built the right applications. They organized the right institutional settings for their work. And normally, I would have them all stand up if we were all together in an audience and we could acknowledge them in the right way. I won't be able to do that obviously today, but I do want to send a warm message to all of you in these organizations, how very proud I am of your work, but also just you should feel very proud and special for doing the kinds of things you're doing. Each year, we also select several of our users for very distinguished acknowledgement. The first one this year is the Making a Difference Award, which is going to Nespresso. This is a division of Nestle. And this organization is amazing because it's working with over 140,000 farmers, small farmers, scattered through 20 countries, helping them in sustainability farming. They have over 400 staff working with these farmers. Well, I don't want to speak all day about them, but I'm very, very excited about them. I'd just like to share this short video and then introduce you to Jan DePietro.
Que se despierten todas las mañanas tomándose el mejor café del mundo y que estén totalmente tranquilos de que ese café proviene de un equipo atrás de cafeteros, de un proyecto de agrónomos que están en pro de la calidad, pero siendo muy responsables siempre con las comunidades, con las familias, con los trabajadores, con el agua, con la tierra, con los árboles. Queremos apostarle a reducir la huella de carbono que se puede producir por una taza de Nespresso, mantener la calidad del agua, tratar de descontaminar el máximo lo que se puede y cuidar los suelos, ¿sí? y la estructura ecológica principal de la región cafetera.
La parte de la aplicación de siembra en el modelo agroforestal, porque le está garantizando al caficultor que va a tener una sombra adecuada para el proceso de calidad de su propio café.
Somos responsables de que la cuenca siga floreciendo agua, siga progresando, siga produciendo café, el café que ustedes se toman, el café Nespresso AAA.
Dear Jack, dear GIS community, greetings from Switzerland. I'm Jan, and on behalf of Nespresso and all the teams involved, I want to thank you for this incredible award. Innovation and sustainability are deeply anchored in Nespresso DNA. So it's no wonder that we started to use ArcGIS to support our journey towards positive impact. We use ArcGIS in many fields of work within the Nespresso AAA program, climate actions such as agroforestry, and more recently for COVID-19 response in support of partners and farmers. Climate change is clearly the greatest threat of the 21st century, and coffee is no exception. We will only be able to meet the challenge with a clear action plan and the efficient technologies to bring it to life.
We are really pleased to receive this award, recognizing our work and vision on sustainability. Of course, we could not be at this level without strong partnership and specifically Esri along the way. We are currently finalizing our sustainability strategy and vision for 2030. And as we will address and continue to address the key biggest challenges on sustainability, such as climate change, farmers' livelihood, circularity, or carbon neutrality, digitalization and geospatial analysis in particular will be key for us in the implementation of this strategy. We know many challenges are ahead of us. Businesses must be part of the solution, and Nespresso will continue to focus on being a force for good to preserve our planet and to improve the livelihood of our farmers and the communities. Thank you again for this reward, and take care.
It is extraordinary work, and I think all of you would agree. This kind of footprint is giving us a model for the entire world about working diligently at creating a more sustainable planet. Our second special award this year is being given to Logic. This is the Louisville, Jefferson County Information Consortium. This has been going on for 35 years. It was started in part by Kurt Bynum, who is still there. He's still the GIS manager. They have 1,300 different databases that they maintain. They have thousands of applications that support water and sewer and urban planning and law enforcement and citizen engagement. It's a real enterprise system with the city and the county and lots of volunteers. Accepting this year's prize is actually the Mayor Fisher, Greg Fisher from the city of Louisville. So Greg.
Hello, everybody. Louisville prides itself as a city where innovation is driven by community collaboration. Our Logic GIS represents a successful 30-year partnership that has changed how we conduct our community's business and serve and inform the residents of our great city. Logic is our shared warehouse of all manner of spatial data about our community. I want to thank our Louisville Metro government team members who work directly with Logic, the Jefferson County Property Valuation Administrator, the Louisville Water Company, and the Metropolitan Sewer District for enthusiastically backing the idea of collaboration to help our community. I also want to thank Kurt Bynum, Director of Logic, and his team for delivering on this critical resource. Most recently, we used Logic to monitor and report the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic in our community. Logic also has been a valuable asset in our important work of advancing racial equity and economic development through the creation of a large and growing gallery of interactive web maps, dashboards, and story maps to inform our citizens and share our wealth of spatial information about our community. Our goal has always been for Logic to serve as a model for GIS collaboration, organization, governance, funding, and resource sharing. So on behalf of all of our partners, professional GIS staff, and our growing user community, we are proud to accept this Enterprise GIS Award. Great job, everybody. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's great. And the little short summary gives you some glimpse of just how, the reason why I picked this organization. It's a geospatially literate community. The third award this year is actually my award. It's the President's Award. And this year we're giving it to the University of Michigan. University of Michigan is a very large, over 50,000 student campus. Actually, it has 3 campuses. And they're being given this award for a whole bunch of reasons. Peter Koop, who is the lead GIS person on campus, has brought GIS to the entire campus. It's opened up the eyes of many departments, and they're doing not only simple GIS access to every student, but they're also going deep in some of the best work that I've ever seen. I'm particularly fond of Peter because not only is he a beacon of how to do university-wide enterprise implementation, but he also shares. He criticizes us, makes us better, but he also shares to educators around the world about how to set this up, how to make this thing come alive. So, Peter, could you say a couple words for us, please?
Thank you, Jack. It is truly an honor to have our work geo-enabling our university recognized with the President's Award. Over 7,000 people use GIS across our institution, and that community continues to grow year over year at an ever-accelerating pace. Our goal to empower everyone with everything GIS began with the introduction of Arcgis Online. The software as a service model enabled us to greatly expand the reach of GIS beyond the traditional desktop server world of the past, with minimal effort and to all disciplines. Today, most units on campus have some faculty or staff using GIS, while nearly all degree programs include students who have used some form of GIS during their time at the U. On behalf of the University of Michigan and my fellow GIS advocates joining me today, thank you again, Jack, for honoring our work with your award.
Thank you again, Peter. It's just amazing. And I want to say all of us appreciate the great work and leadership that you're providing.